All right, everybody, welcome to the show. Welcome to the podcast. Today we have a guest on that is someone who every time I meet her or have an interaction with her, it turns into a really cool, heavy conversation. She's one of the most well-read people in like natural healthcare, hands-on healing, spirituality that I know. And I figure the best way to disseminate that out a little bit is have her on the show, get her talking, because it's always fascinating. She's amazing. She's gotten into so many heavy things. She's recommended books for me to read. I've learned a lot in her presence, and I've never left without my head kind of spinning after a nice conversation with her. And some of these conversations are very short, and I'm still going, wow, that's just a really cool way to go. So today we're going to welcome Martha Blessing on our show. She is a registered nurse and so much more than that, beyond that, in so many different directions. And I hope she's going to get into that. I want to start by asking her initially a little bit about her background. First off, Martha, welcome.
Thanks. Excited to be here. We get some actual quality time to dig in.
Yeah, absolutely. What I want to start out with is, I only know so much of your background. I don't know as much as the viewers might think I know. I know the least about you as far as history, which is only, so valuable. I'm really one who likes to look forward more. But just real briefly, you got into healthcare in a sense, or the healing arts. What motivated you to do that? Were you born to do that? Was there some event in your life that just put you on this path? Give us an idea of what started you.
Yeah. All of the above, actually, right? So really, I was destined to it, to find out in hindsight.
Yeah.
But I started in Western nursing later in life. I didn't go to nursing school until I was 28 years old. And pretty much right after I started nursing school, I started having back pain and back problems and sciatica.
Oh, yeah.
And that would lead to 3 back surgeries, which I think I came to know you maybe after the third or between the second and the third, I don't know. And at one point I was in a wheelchair and the doctors told me that I wouldn't walk again. I lost all the reflexes in my left leg down. So somewhere along in that journey, I started to wake up to who I really was and what was going on in the body and what is this body and what's it doing and why am I having all of these experiences and symptoms and problems. And that really started the opening in the path into the holistics, because Western medicine did not have answers for me.
Mm-hmm.
It just didn't have answers. And there was something inside that didn't make sense, that didn't resonate, right? Like there was that little, people talk about that spark or that intuitive hit or something. And I had been a competitive figure skater. So the idea of this is how it's going to be and you're not going to walk and you're going to be in a wheelchair.
Not acceptable.
Did not appeal to me at all.
Not acceptable.
Yeah. So it took me 10 years to get out of that pain. Wow. It took me 10 years. I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia and I had the 3 back surgeries. And, the second one was good, right? Because I could walk again, but I was still living in daily chronic pain. And I took a bucket of pills. They had me on, you and I, like you said, we've had small conversations about this, and it just didn't resonate with me. Having been a nurse, right? That was my gift and my godsend. Was I knew that if I kept taking all of these medications, I'd have no kidney, no liver, no stomach, nothing. And I was 30 years old at the time. So I was like, nah, that's not really what I want for myself either.
Yeah.
So I started exploring. And after that, the path really revealed itself like one step at a time. Right after my second surgery, my dad had emergency bypass surgery. And so he needed to get rid of his stress. And I wanted to get more flexibility, start getting my body flexible and moving again. So we took a yoga class.
You and your father?
Yep.
No, it's fantastic.
Yeah, he was 70 years old. We went to Himalayan Institute.
That's great.
And he started practicing yoga, and that led me to Kripalu Institute, Kripalu Center. in Lenox, Massachusetts. And I was there for a weekend to just check it out. And mind you, this was pre-internet.
Sure.
So there was not a lot of things that you could go and look and research or whatever. And I went there and I knew nothing about energy medicine. I knew nothing about energy healing. That was foreign to me. It's not like it is today at all. And I had a body wave work, some kind of session that they offered that was energy healing. And it rocked my world. I had no idea what had just happened to me, but I felt completely different. It was the first time in probably 7 years I had no pain for 3 days, and I didn't take any medications.
That'll wake you up. That'll make you wonder, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like how did you get into that body through the mind, through a calmness, a change in the way you thought, getting the static out of your life in a sense, taking that constant stimuli and putting some focus in a different area, and somehow the body just changed itself.
Yeah.
That to me is one of the most fascinating things about mind-body medicine, is that when you start to see, and then you start to put the pathway together. I'm not happy until I know how something works. I come from a very mechanical background. And when someone first described to me how much the body prepares itself for whatever the mind tells it the environment is signaling. So if the environment is signaling danger, we get into the danger physiology. And if we constantly feel in danger, we're constantly in the danger physiology, and we break down from that. It's hard to heal when you're in the performance breakdown mode. You have to get into that other mode, right? And that's obviously what happened with you.
Yeah. At the time, I just knew that something really profound had happened. And I had to know what it was. Like, what just happened to me? And why, after all this time, taking these medications, like I was taking 10, 15 milligrams of Valium, I was taking Elavil, I was taking, 800 milligrams of Motrin, I was taking 10,500 Vicodin. I mean, it was a walking pharmacy. And all of a sudden, something had happened, like a switch had been flipped.
Yeah.
And
one of the first things I thought it was interesting when we studied pharmacology is that if we don't have a receptor for it, it can't work on us. So in other words, a drug put in our body has a receptor. So if you have a receptor, you probably can create that chemistry yourself, would be the logical explanation or the logical belief from that point. So how do we get our minds to create the chemistry that would put us in the healing state, whether that be to decrease pain or to turn on healing? I think that's at the crux of what mind-body medicine is. And when we say mind-body medicine, I know Deepak Chopra gets into the body-mind or the mind-body. He doesn't like to separate them. He puts the two words as one word.
I don't separate them either.
Yeah, I think we separated them a while ago, and we got to bring it back.
Yeah. How I learned to bridge these two worlds, right? Western medicine, I'm a nurse. And then, really, how far out do you want to go? But my roots are, and I think we've had this conversation. My father's cousin was a chiropractor in Western New York in the early 1900s, right? So it's in my blood, it's in my genes to be in this holistic place. So how could I bridge that and rectify, what I was experiencing and what I was taught, and all of these pieces was, it's all energy. The mind isn't one energy and the body another energy. Like, we're all in one container.
Yes.
It's one continuous. And so you just have to determine how you're going to move and manage that energy in the container.
Yeah, it's well put.
We have the ability to choose, and it is fully a choice, I believe, on what's going to stay in this container and what's going to leave the container.
I heard someone say one time that one of the things that separates us to some degree from animals is we have the ability to choose our own thoughts. And I know, like in meditation, that is what I do. I choose to think of other things besides the here and the now. And expand on that for me. When you think about how, as developed beings, we have such a forebrain that is, in one sense, making us kind of crazy, right? Making us have to deal with emotions at a higher level and have this consciousness. And at another level, that same consciousness can be what we use to heal ourselves. So talk to me about when you meditate, when you get into those healing states, what are you focusing on? What are you trying to do? I've used the term equanimity, to become equal to everything around me, to be the same size as everything. So nothing seems bigger or smaller or better or worse, that we're in a sense equal in that sense. And with that equanimity, there's peace instead of conflict.
Yeah, that's interesting. I have a totally different process.
Oh, good.
A totally
Good.
different process.
I like different ones. Let's mix it up.
You know, and one piece we skipped over was in the process of me getting into healing was that I was led to becoming a clinical Ayurvedic practitioner.
Right.
And the Ayurvedic piece is all about the elements that are in everything, right? Like the earth, the wind, the fire, the air, the water, all of those pieces. And they make up everything, and they make up our body. The mind has this tendency to run away and be used in a way of just being in constant fear. Ayurveda says all illness is a failure of intellect.
Wow.
So that's using our brain in a way that doesn't actually serve us. And that's also another way that we get to choose. We get to choose what we want to think about. But what we're usually doing is using our brain to either regret something from the past or worry about something from the future.
Absolutely.
It hasn't even happened yet.
Mm-hmm.
So my process in I don't even like to use the word meditation.
Mm-hmm.
I teach my clients and I teach people stillness.
Okay.
And there's a difference. In the beginning, yes. One of my teachers at Kripalu, we used to call him Mr. Valium because his voice was so soothing. It was just, it would relax you. And we become what we practice. It's one of my favorite lines. So in the beginning, when we're not used to being still, the ego mind wants to, the conscious negative ego brain wants to find something to be critical about and be hyper about and be vigilant about. But in that place of stillness, all I do is I come, I have a meditation room and I come in every single morning, and my only path, my only purpose is as I follow and watch my breath. Because we can't shut our brain off, but we can give it something different to focus on. And so in the beginning, people will listen to a meditation because it helps give them a point of focus. And they have to listen to the music, or they have to listen to the voice, or they're focusing on the visualization going down the river or the light or the sun or the ocean or whatever. But when you use the breath in the rise and the fall of your chest and your heart center, you're actually tuning in and tapping into your life force. You're tapping into the energy that is your energy, that is your inner healer, your inner wisdom, where you get your answers versus from something else outside of you.
Right. The issue I see a lot of times is people searching for the answers to their issues outside of themselves, right? Change the world instead of change yourself. And I think the first step would be to change yourself, and then follow into the world and make the changes according to who you really have become. As you become something greater, you attract different people, and you have different conversations, and your focus changes, and pretty soon you're bringing up the spirit and the energy of people that are harmonizing with you. And that becomes very powerful for everybody. It becomes, encouraging for everybody. I think one of the questions I wanted to ask you was why people don't heal. I remember listening to a tape, I think it was Carolyn Mace, long time ago,
Yeah.
and she was getting into sort of trashing support groups, and that she felt that support groups sort of fed on the worst person in the group as far as like the disability, whatever that condition that they're supporting each other on, gets all the love. So the love was gone, was placed upon the sickest, and that people crave love so much, they actually would subconsciously stay sick for the attention and or the love, however you want to word it. I mean, attention sounds like really, like a really sort of an undeveloped want, where love would be, something everybody understands why they want it. So when you're working with your clients, what do you think the biggest block to people healing is, and what do you do about it?
Well, there's for me, and the frame that I put things in my work is that there's 3 barriers to wellness. Part of that is from my training, and part of it is from my own personal experience, right? The barriers, number 1 is core cause, is the first. And that is getting to the core cause. So, we go to Western medicine, or even in chiropractic, right? It's like there's a diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
And quite honestly, and we could go down a rabbit hole with this, but a diagnosis doesn't mean anything, really.
I agree. One
It
diagnosis.
means something to the insurance company,
Well,
but to you and I, it really doesn't mean anything.
I Gary, a diagnosis, I warn my patients, is a man-made watertight container to try to stuff you in. And we need it to build an insurance company. We need it sometimes to say something. I've had people go off and come back with a diagnosis that of a condition that maybe I was working on. And I'm like, well, yeah, that is what it's called. But what I am saying about that, is this, and this. Let's do these things to get rid of that problem. But people seem to like these names. One of my favorites is lumbago. It's a very old word. You laugh hearing it, right? Because I would jokingly tell some patients that have lower back pain, and well, my diagnosis for you is lumbago. And they're like, well, what does that mean? I mean, it means low back pain. And remember you told me you had low back pain? Well, let me tell you, you have low back pain. And I have a diagnosis for that. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. It's silly, right? It's really not, but you can bill for that. That there's a code for that. And it's just absolutely ridiculous. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So if the body, my premise is, having healed all the things that I've healed, the body knows how to be healthy, right? Mm-hmm. We have this amazing container of energy that breathes without us having to do a thing. Our heart beats without us having to do anything. And I say, God, source, spirit, whatever your higher power is, like, knew what it was doing. Like, we'd forget, right? So it made this stuff automatic. So there's intelligence in our bodies, and they do know how to be healthy. So that core cause is not the diagnosis. It's what's getting in the way of this energy. Why isn't this energy flowing properly? Right? Now, some of it can be belief, which I just actually recorded a video about that. We're being programmed. A lot of the work I do is with universal laws, and we're being programmed to believe that our bodies don't know how to heal, and they don't know how to be healthy because there's financial interests in it. We won't even really go down that road because it's too far. It's too long.
It is.
So many people have the belief, like, can I really do this? Is it really possible? I want to think it is. I see that people are doing it, but maybe I can't do it. Maybe their body is different than mine, which it is, but it's not, right? We're unique, but we're all still that same container of energy. Mm-hmm. Or they have the wrong tools. And here's where the wrong tools come in. Level 1 is the person that has, say, irritable bowel. And they go to the doctor, you have irritable bowel, and they're completely unconscious and unaware, and they have no idea how, why, what reason they got this, and they're going to go to the doctor, and the doctor's going to fix it, and they're going to take care of it, and they relinquish all responsibility for the outcome of that.
Right.
They're giving all their power away. I had nothing to do with creating this. It's separate from me, and the doctor knows better, and he's going to take care of it. And then level 2, they come to, geez, what is all this stuff I'm hearing about healing and holistics and this and that? And they start to maybe look that direction, and they go, well, maybe I did have something to do with this. Maybe it was stress. Maybe I should look into meditation or yoga or stress management. But they're not really fully invested, and they don't really believe. It's just kind of, yeah, well, maybe. They still go to the doctor, they still take the pills, but they're kind of dabbling.
Yeah.
And, or they might even come to you at that point, right? I'll go to chiropractic. They don't have a lot of investment in creating change for themselves necessarily. And the answer is still outside themselves. But they kind of want to think and hope and maybe, because they don't really want to be destined to that life over there at level 1. Level 3, they start really being active. That's where I got to. And I was at level 3 for like 10 years. It took me to get out of that place where I actually learned how to fully heal. And that's where acupuncture, chiropractic, nutrition, like all of the holistic, the Reiki, the energy healing, essential oils, all of that, it's inherently better than level 1 and level 2. And you're starting to work more in sync with the body. But it's still giving some of your power away to something outside yourself.
Right, a substance.
And we need, you know, somebody had a hard time that I was talking to with this about getting in alignment, because this was my big, I always ask the question, and until I get an answer, I keep asking that question. And the question was, we have all of this available to us. Why aren't people getting better? All this holistic stuff. And I had an Ayurvedic wellness center. I had a healing practice for years. People would come and plop down on my table, get healing work done, get the next Ayurvedic diet and the next Ayurvedic herb. And every month this kept going on over and over again. And they weren't doing anything that I suggested or recommended in those 30 days when they weren't in my presence.
Right. I find myself having to sort of wake patients up to the idea that their healing takes them in an active role. And some people, like you're saying, they come in and they're going to the chiropractor, and I adjust them and they like it, and they go home and they do their stretches, and we get at, let's say, so far. Sometimes we get it all done, other times we're only so far. And they're like, well, why do I still have this amount of discomfort or this amount of, and I'm like, okay, you ready to go to the next level? That's kind of how I put it. And they're like, well, what do you mean? I said, well, we have to change some of the other behaviors. And then I always like to try to get away from the word meditation, because for the average person, it needs to be demystified. Yeah. It's still kind of a wild, wacky thing. So but I do want people to start off, okay, let's start with some nutritional changes. Let's start with some physical exercises more than just the stretches. And then get into, what are you spending most of your day thinking about? And I've recommended news boycotts even before the mass media turned into a really, really high-tech fear-based machine. And people would take me up on that, but there's that addiction, right? For people to look for danger, because they feel safer if they know what danger they can focus on, even though there's a lot of them. At least I have one to hang on to. And I try to, how do you get out of jail if you don't know you're in jail? So I try to inform people that.
Well, and so here's in the level that where I work is the mental, emotional, spiritual causes, right? So, it's really Candace Pert, molecules of emotion, and my mantra has always been the issues are in the tissues, right?
Yeah.
So, I come to you, and I'll use myself as an example. I'm happy to. I have issues with my neck. I have a sore neck. I have a sore shoulder. I'm working on these different things Now I've been doing this long enough that I know how to actually go right to that area and that place and start to kind of understand, what am I holding there? What emotions, what histories, what thoughts, what patterns are causing me to be in fear and constricting the flow of energy in the body? Or, what area and what level, it's fascinating how it's all, when we go back to what you're saying about the mind body medicine, I'm having thoughts and I can find and track when I'm having thoughts about something. I'll tune into my body and see, where is it going? Because I'm either in fear or I'm in anger, so I know the things that I'm releasing that held grief, that held, and we're in it now, right? With all of this stuff with COVID, people are having to face, they're at home, they're having to face all of their stuff. We can't run. And I mean, that's what the news is. That's what all of these things are, is let me just pretend like all of this stuff never happened. Let me pretend all these other things in my life that I'm thinking about and worrying about all the time from the past to the future aren't happening. Mm-hmm. Instead of like moving towards them and dismantling them and finding our true self.
You mentioned the past and the future, and it reminds me of the book, The Power of Now, right? Yeah. I think you probably read that one. Yeah. And it was such a simple concept. And I thought of all the people in my life that have so much concern about the future. They're in fear of the future. And then so many other people that lived in the past, either in a nostalgic way or in some other form. And in that book, he gets into we're really inefficient at predicting the future. We're not very good at it. And so we can think of the 50 possibilities that are going to happen when you go and do X, Y, or Z. And you can think about all the stuff in the past. And he says we rewrite our memories because of all sorts of things. And you think about the human mind is only so great at remembering and predicting. So what you're really great is the right now. And what's the best way of making a good future? Well, taking really quality actions right now. And I think that sums up what he puts in his entire book, but he gives you many exercises. So The Power of Now is a book I recommend to a lot of people, especially people that are stuck. I feel like they're stuck in the past, or they're so concerned about the future. The book helped me, and I'm not even really one of those people that much. And I thought, God, this really helped me. I can imagine what this is going to do for people that are, in the past or the future. But I come from a point where if we've been here, I like the number, and I've said this in other podcasts, 165,000 years that humans have been on the planet in the form that we're kind of in. And in doing so, we've become very efficient at survival. And your genome and my genome have made it. Other genomes didn't make it. If we've made it, we must have been really good at sensing the environment, coming up with a physical, biochemical, hydraulic, neurological answer to turn on the right chemistry, whether it's the kidney or the muscles or the eyes or the pupil dilation or the color of our cheeks, how red they get, to blend in or to attack, to survive. But if we're constantly in the same state all the time, because marketers, the news, like we're talking about, people trying to sell us things, or just the situation we appear to be in keeps turning on the same stuff, we kind of just burn out. We just use that same stuff over and over and over again. And then you see the tension patterns in people. Like obviously now the big state is fear. And then it goes into anger. So you see people are angry and fearful right now more than I've ever seen. I even fight it myself. So in a situation like that, escape in a healthy fashion. So like you're saying, the stillness, because in stillness, maybe you can expand on, in stillness, I wouldn't think that you could be angry or fearful as easily. You think that's true?
Well, you can be, but when you go into the stillness, it will take you to, if you choose, that's setting an intention, right? Mm-hmm. So what we resist persist. And, mm-hmm. If I keep avoiding, right? Like I could avoid this. My gratitude is, until I learn how to clear this angry, I know exactly what it is and what's causing it. Until I can release it and clear it, which I'm doing every day in my practices, because it's energy. I keep coming back to the energy, right? It's not moving freely. Same thing when you do an adjustment, you're freeing up energy.
Exactly.
That's being congested there. Well, think of the brain. I mean, talk about congested energy.
Right.
Right? We're all up here congested. And if you have 100 circuits to run this body and 75 of them are up here, what's running the rest? We're like checked out, shut off, cut off from our whole being, like the energy of ourselves. We're doing everything we can to not feel, instead of getting in and actually just feeling and being okay with it, and then releasing whatever the old stuff is. So in the stillness, that's where that happens, right? Now, if you're listening to Deepak, not to diss Deepak or anyone else that does meditations, I have a meditation CD too. People will go into that. This is a perfect example. A woman said to me, so how I healed the fibromyalgia in my body was I channeled a meditation called the love meditation. And that's sort of the basis of the stillness, right? Is it's going into blending this idea of you having like light and lightness in your being, instead of this heaviness and stress and pain and, you know, fight or flight response. Combining that light and going into the center of our beings and our body to a place where we can remember a time where we felt deep, deep love, right? To connect ourselves with what we truly are is that sense of deep love, right? Without all, before all this stuff happened. And from the time we are zero, you know, in utero to 7 years old, our conscious brain is not developed. So we cannot reject anything that's been dumped into our brain by our parents. And for the most part, everybody's carrying around some kind of minutia that was dumped in that was painful. Sure. And that's what we're trying to avoid, right? It's Groundhog Day. We put a story in, we play this same, you know, idea of something that's, same tape of something that's bad. When we go into the stillness, this woman said to me, okay, now when I do the love meditation, now how long should I do this for? She wanted me to tell her, based on, you know, her problem and symptoms, you know, listen for a week or 2 months or however long, and then you won't have to listen anymore to be gone. You'll be healed. I said, that's the wrong question.
I get very similar questions in my work where people will say, how many visits does it take? How long should I come to the chiropractor? And I like to say, well, I want you to learn from me, whether it's what I'm physically doing in the adjustment or what I tell you to do at home in the body or in the mind, a way of breaking up the stagnation that is part of your life. So what I really want you to do is never stop breaking stagnation. Always get stagnation to flow. That's my primary definition. If I give a talk and I want to get people listening, I'll start the talk by saying, hello, I have the cure for all disease. I have the cause. I know the cause of all disease. And then of course, people think you're out of your mind. And I tell them that the cause of all disease is stagnation and the cure is flow. And then I give all the examples, whether it's, you know, putting a stent in someone's cardiac, you know, in one of their arteries in their heart, you created flow where there was stagnation. And it isn't just, you know, it isn't just my work at all. It's the universal principle of how to heal. So if I can get that person to now know, okay, so stagnation is part of my problem. Growth is fantastic. Growth is life. It's related. You think the most living things are growing. You know, the human body, when it's the most alive and able to heal the quickest, is when it's under growth hormone and the frame and the body is still open. At age 25, that changes. And then the growth of the physical body slows down. You know, you can still put on weight, obviously, but you're not going to really grow in size and put on, you know, more organs and tissue, even though they always turn themselves over and get into that. But I think I want people to learn that I'm here to teach you about stagnation and give you things to create flow. And you're talking about this being a love meditation, right?
Yeah.
One of the things that I love when people add into what love is, because the Greeks had many definitions for love. And I heard one recently that it's the want for all things to flourish. I just never heard that as part of, not that that's the only definition of love, but it's one of the many characteristics of love. If you wanted all things to flourish, and I hesitated with it because I thought, well, we don't want bad things to flourish. We want good things to flourish. And then I thought, well, if we want all things to flourish, the bad things would kind of eat themselves alive, because truth is one of the main things we're after. So if we promote the flourishing of all things, we're being loving, right? And then what will rise to the surface will possibly be the ugliness of untruths. And then with further flourishing beyond that, we all end up in a better place.
Yeah. Well, and with this girl in particular, like with this meditation, I thought, how long should I do this for? Well, how long is it going to take you to be in love with yourself? How long is it going to take you to remove that self-judgment? How long is it going to, so if you knew how beautiful you were inside, you would never ask me when you get to stop doing this practice, because you would want to tap into that and let that be the fuel that creates your life and your wellness and everything you create from that place. Right. Absolutely. And once you get to it, and once you see it, you may not live there all the time, 100% of the time, but you know how to get back to it, and you know the truth, and you know that it's real. And so when you see yourself out of alignment with that, that's when you say, well, now I need to come back to this again, because something's pulled me off. I'm either in the past or in the future, or, I'm not seeing my true self. But the more that the things bubble out when you're in that stillness, I had one of my mentors and teachers tell me that the purpose of all life was to create more life.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that. Like, okay. And I believe that. So it's our expansion, and we're so busy. It seems to me that we're so busy investing all of our energy in the contraction that we don't know how to be in the expansion.
Give me an example of the contraction. I like that, but I'm not sure if
Oh gosh.
Do you mean as far as like being protecting oneself? Fear to me is a contraction.
Oh, absolutely it is.
Right.
It's not our what is the word I want to use? It's not our divine state.
Right. Absolutely.
Our body knows how to be healthy.
The amount of time someone
in the contraction, the energy, the contraction is that, the average person is waking up every day and trying to figure out how to not experience themselves, how to not love themselves, and how to put out the fire or tend to some kind of an addiction that will help them not feel themselves and be in their bodies. And then we wonder why our bodies are screaming at us.
Wow, that's well put.
Right?
Yeah. Absolutely. You think of what people do to distract themselves from the quietness that will bring upon them all the stuff they have to work out.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is why people say, I can't meditate. I can't sit still, and I can't quiet my brain.
Right. I always tell people, if you are getting into meditative states and you are you wake up and you say, okay, I'm going to meditate. If you say you have to go meditate now, you're not there. You're not there. If you say it's my time, or I get to, it's like the same thing. If I say I have to go to work, or I get to go to work now, or I'm going to the office now, those are all very different phrases, meaning it's exposing my inner feelings about what I'm about to do. And I've had people say to me, when do I get to come back? Other people say to me, do I have to come back again? And I was like, yeah, you have to come back. Terrible, right? Or you get to come back. Well, that's really cool. Let's look at that. But getting to the past and the future, a lot of people think, well, if I only lived in the now, I would just act crazy because I wouldn't care about the future, right? But it's not that silly. It's spend some time on considering the future, spend some time understanding where you came from. We started this interview by me asking you where you came from. What were your motivations, right? It gives us a little bit of groundwork to understand who you are. I think that's interesting. If we spent the entire time talking about your past, oh God, right? You would probably hate it, and everybody would be like, well, that's great, but where's she going? How am I getting, we learn a little bit. Wayne Dyer one time said that he's a do-do therapist. And I thought that was really funny. I'm like, I wonder what that means. He's like, he wants people to go and do things, right? We're going to talk about it, then you're going to go out and take action on what I'm saying. And he would also say that he, in 5 minutes, I believe it was, to complain and to talk about their mother and to talk about the damage. And then everything else was answers, places to go and things to get done. So I really enjoy that kind of thing. I'd rather be going someplace, because you think about what life is, you said earlier about life is about healing, moving forward, and that life leads to more life.
Yeah, the purpose of all life is to create more life.
Yeah, and you think about it, when you're full of life, it's easy to create more life. From fertility all the way down to the ability to go outside and dig a trench and plant seeds and grow vegetables, right? Yeah. You have the physical
ability. Which is energy. I mean,
right.
Everything, it just keeps boiling back down to energy. And where are you investing your energy? Are you investing your energy in what you can create? Like, action is important, but inspired action, right? Like, I learned this in my own business. I had so many, business coaches and gurus and people telling me how to do things. And I was like, yeah, but it doesn't feel good. Yeah, but it doesn't feel right. It doesn't, I don't feel inspired. I can't sustain this.
Right.
But when I know that I can sit in my stillness and all of a sudden I get this great inspiration, and then I go out to my laptop and I start writing about it and I put it up on the website, I've been inspired, and that essence and that energy creates.
Right.
And creates a vortex of really positive energy. And so I trust it all and people move into it. And we've got to get to more of that, right? Like that inspired action versus taking action from fear to avoid something. And I say that with healing. I say, the problem is that most people are focused on the problem, not the solution.
Right.
They're using their mind to focus on how their body isn't working instead of investing in ways to look at how the body is actually supporting and working, and what could they do to participate in that.
Yeah, I've learned early on, when you talk about the problem, changing it to the word challenge. I know you know this kind of thinking. It's like mind 101, right? And when you think about when you have a challenge, you're inspired to take it on. It sounds interesting. When you have a problem, you're saying, this is bigger than me. If someone comes to me and says, I have a problem I want to talk to you about, I'm thinking, okay, this person's belief is that this situation has been judged as something bigger than them, and they're really like deflated, and they want me to inflate them or give them answers, which is fine. But if someone says, I have this challenge in front of me, right then I think, okay, this person is going to help me help them, right? This is going to be really cool. I'll take on either one, or I do that every day. And I'm happy to do that every day. But it's always a little more energizing when someone says, I have this challenge I want to, you to help me with. It's like, well, this is going to be great. It just feels more energetic. It feels like we have something to go and do. It's going to be, we're going to learn. This is going to make us stronger. Those kind of things. But with all this, I want the viewers to be able to go home with a couple of tools. I want them to be able to contact you easily. And I also want, like, I'd like you to name a couple of books that you think for the average person, and let's say the average person is someone who goes and seeks acupuncture, chiropractic, massage. Maybe they know Deepak Chopra, maybe they don't. Maybe they know Ayurveda, and maybe they don't. But they're interested, they're active, they're positive, they're ready to take the next step. What are some books that really, whether they're the most oldest book or something written yesterday, that you think somebody can sink their teeth into?
Yeah. And I love books, right? I used to own a bookstore.
Well, yeah, I can. You are, every time we talk, there's like 3 books I want to go buy. So go ahead.
You know,
I always feel you to narrow it down.
my very first book into all of this was Carolyn May's Anatomy of the Spirit.
Okay.
That was the
Sure.
very first book I read early on. And it helps explain the interconnectedness of our body, our mind, our spirit, illness. You know, it's a lot about the chakras and things like that, but it's very well written, and I think it helps open our minds to having some kind of investment in our own outcome rather than giving our power away. Another book that I really enjoyed was Joy's Way.
Okay.
And it's by Dr. Brew Joy. He was an MD. And he has since passed on, I think, in the 80s. He's brilliant for his time and a medical doctor. And he healed himself of pancreatic cancer.
Oh, wow. That's worth writing
all with
about.
energy medicine and energy healing. And the book is
Amazing.
about that journey, and there's some techniques in there, and I've used them for many years. Another one would be Anita Moorjani's book, which is Dying to Be Me. She has 2 out, but her first one was Dying to Be Me.
Okay.
And, you know, the biggest takeaway and the most profound significance about her story and her journey, she was loaded with cancer. Okay. She was on her deathbed. She had spent 4 years in all of the holistic alternatives. She did everything. For 4 years, she did Ayurveda. She was in the hospital. Literally, her organs were shutting down. She had about 36 hours to live.
Wow.
And she died. She had a near-death experience. And she saw the truth of her being and of our being, of that consciousness. She connected to all of that. And once she saw that, she was able to just let go of all of the mental, emotional judgments and demons, anything that was unlike love that she carried for herself. It wasn't about anyone else. It was about for herself, loving herself and accepting herself.
Right.
It was cleared away. She saw the truth. And she came back, and within, you know, a couple of days, all of the cancer was gone.
Amazing. What a great title for a book too, or a great title that summarizes that, Dying to Be Me, because I've seen themes like that in my life and in patients' lives. I one time was talking to a friend of mine years ago who was really considering suicide, and we had this really great deep conversation till 3 a.m. And one of the things that I was able to get across to him was that I think he needed to die off in what he knew of himself and what he believed about himself, and to just walk away and be somebody new. He didn't have to end his time on earth in the physical realm. He needed to get rid of what had been created by him and or his environment, what he allowed his parents and his teachers and his peers exactly to summarize, because he couldn't understand how I could be happy in the miserable world that he saw, because we live in a very similar world. He's a friend of mine. We went to school together and everything. And I said, I'm just coming to different conclusions than you are. It's that simple. And these conclusions you're reaching, we're not that different in our skill sets. We're not that different people. And that did it for him. He's like, yeah, I got to get rid of the me without getting rid of the full me. I said, yeah, we're all going to.
That's the, you know, people want to know how to heal. That's what it is right there. That's what it is right there. That's, you know, all of that shame and guilt and judgment and everything, that's what's creating the illness. That's the work that I do, is to help people unpack that and release it wherever they're holding it in their bodies, so that they can be free to be who they came here to be.
Yeah.
You know,
you think of how beautiful it is when someone is being themselves, right? When someone is trying to be someone they're not, and it's not always because they just, a lot of times it's just from self-hatred. And when someone lets that go and you see that actual person, like comedians will say when they get up on stage, they have to be their authentic, little weird, odd thoughts they have to put them out there. If it, you know, I think Chris Rock said it was like psychotherapy out there. And that's what was so funny, is that those thoughts, you think you're the only one having them, and there he is saying things that are embarrassing and bizarre, and people are laughing their heads off because, wow, I've had that embarrassing and bizarre thought too. I thought it was just me. And there's that community in that. And obviously with the beautiful way he exaggerates things, it's just an amazing thing to see. So I think I agree with you in that it's a shedding of all the garbage that you've been convinced that you're not good enough, right? It's one thing to motivate, say, your children to be better and to be the best they can be, and then it gets to the point where, okay, now are you trying to make this child someone they can never be? And then in that, it's a ridiculous mess.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, that was the power in the love meditation when I channeled it. It was basically taking me into myself again. And when I learned to have that love and acceptance for myself as a feeling in my body, as an energy in my body, I learned how to use my breath and actually move it to all those places that I was carrying, all the anger and the shame and stuff that I had, taken on that story, which is what most of us are doing.
So it starts with breath. That's where that would start the state of stillness.
Yeah, what happens is, you watch this, first you can feel it coming in through the nostrils, right? And then when you take another breath and you go down into your heart center, what I have people do is just watch as they breathe in. There's this little micro movement of your chest rising up. And then when you exhale, it falls back down. And you literally just sit and watch this movement, right? Like you're getting in tune with the rhythm of yourself. Mm-hmm. Right? You're coming back home, so to speak, as corny as that is, right? Because nobody's home. They're all out there chasing after anything, right? I mean, that's our culture.
But no one's home.
It's like you're coming home, phone home, right? So you're literally phoning home. You're literally coming back to yourself and feeling, experiencing like that space where, oh, there really is some peace in here. If I just now you'll get a wave, you'll get a thought. What am I going to make for dinner? Or what am I, all of the stuff will come in and you say, thank you. We'll deal with it later. For right now, just these 15 minutes, I'm just going to watch this rhythm of my body and my breath. And, you might even tune into your heart. You tune into more of that expansion of yourself, right? That just letting go, to just be able to sit. They think it's scary to sit still, but it's like, oh my God, I could just let go. Like, oh my God, I could just and so that idea, I have to quiet my mind and do all this stuff. No, you don't. You don't have to listen to anything. You don't have to do anything. Just come right to this place. And it's so peaceful. It's so lovely and peaceful. It's like, why wouldn't you want to do it?
Right. I mean, I look for those rhythms in nature, and whether I'm actually sitting in a forest or on the side of a mountain, or I'm, somewhere totally chaotic and insane, that's where I sort of picture myself, right? And you need to think about when you have a babbling brook and you have wind through a tree and you have crickets or whatever, you are back into nature that's in harmony. And man is so out of harmony. It's sad.
Nature's only in the present moment.
Right.
Nature's not thinking about the future.
No.
It's just in itself, experiencing itself, right?
Experiencing the now.
Just, that's what it's doing.
A good friend of mine's father had a massive heart attack, died and came back. And before he passed that time, before he came back, he was a very disciplinarian, I wouldn't say he was petty. He was such a good person, but he definitely was kind of rigid, and he was always kind of somewhere else when you talk to him. He was concerned. He had a big, irresponsible life. I don't blame the man. But after he came back, he enjoyed the little things, little kids, dogs, the sun, the moon. He just was paying attention to things, and he became a much more pleasant individual to be around. I always loved the guy, but he wasn't real pleasant. He was challenging and interesting.
Yeah.
And then he became pleasant and interesting and not as challenging and more loving. And I think he got some kind of message about how short life is and how he wasn't really home. I like the way you put that. Like, why don't you go home? I love the ET reference, ET phone home, you know. You told me you were a nerd, and I'm believing it more and more. That's good. But so yeah, that's really what I wanted to cover today. You taught us a lot. I really appreciate it. I think we hit some stuff. I'm going to be watching this podcast and taking some notes, I think, over some of the points we made, because I think it's a different one from the other ones we've done so far. And I knew you would be, because of your background and your interests and the conversations, the micro conversations that we've had over the years.
Yeah.
But anything else you want to get into? Anything else you want to leave the viewers with? First, and certainly, how do people get a hold of you? How do people get involved with your work?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I have to add the bonus book. If anybody wants a bonus book, is my book that I wrote called Healed and Unlimited.
Right.
The Secret to Breaking Free from Chronic Disease and Igniting Your Personal Power. That's on Amazon. And then, and also on my website, which is marthablessing.com.
Yeah. Nice and easy.
Yeah.
What a great last name.
Thanks.
Such a great last name.
Yeah.
All right, Martha. Thank you again. I appreciate it.
You.
I appreciate your time.
Having me.
My pleasure. My pleasure. We will talk soon, and we may do another one of these in the near future.
I'd love to. Thanks.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. Have a great day.
Take care.
You too.